We are here at MTAV, Multi-Tech Audio Visual. We are going to give you sort of a primer on the live sound. I'm going to start with a kind of a short introduction so you can kind of understand where I'm at as far as this is all concerned. Some of you may know, but or not, that I started out as a musician. In high school, I had a multicolored drum kit because that's all I could get for free from my uncle, who was a music teacher. I started playing live shows and became, sort of the voluntold technician for the band. So that was kind of the start. Just to give you an example, I really had no idea what I was doing. The first gig we had, we rented guitar amplifiers that we plugged our microphones into. So just so you know, not everybody starts off knowing everything. So anyway, later on, I bought my first console or mixer from the Good Brothers. Some of you may or may not know who the Good Brothers are. At the time, they were probably the most popular country band in Canada, multi-Juno award winning, and I was in a band with their son. Some of you might know that band. They are called the Sadies, and my friend is Travis Good. So anyway, I bought my first mixer from their dad and also a set of column speakers that were really crappy that I had to fix. So when I opened it, I found this, which is my very first tool I ever got for doing live sound. That's a pair of wire strippers. I found that inside this column speaker attached to the magnet of one of the speakers. And I still have it today, and that is 35 years later or so. Actually, no, more than that.
Dating yourself.
Almost 40 years later. Ooh. What else?
Hey, Vons, do you want
yes.
me to do a quick introduction for you guys and just read out your bio?
Sure. That makes
sure.
sense.
I wanted to go through this stuff because it kind of leads into what I'm about to talk about. Whatever you like, man. If you want to do that,
right.
Sure.
I'll just do this really quickly. Here we go. So here we have the Multi-Tech Audio Visual family-owned AV made simple, Vons and Karen Zinn. Multi-Tech Audio Visual was born with one primary goal in mind: to make a difference. They are often overheard quoting this old proverb: if you don't do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And they live by this every day of their lives. So Von's passion being sound, and Karen's desire to be more involved in our community, they decided to expand their AV services to their hometown and local communities and operate as a full-service AV company. They are committed to providing a professional state-of-the-art audio-visual and lighting equipment rentals and superior on-site service to ensure your live audience will be remembering your event for all the right reasons. So we at OMCI are certainly fortunate to have MTAV as a proud and active sponsor.
So want me to just pick up where I left off?
Sure, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Okay, so no worries. So I became sort of the sound guy for the band. So I started having more of an interest in that. I found myself more interested in the sound than actually playing the drums. So I decided I was going to try to pursue a career in doing sound. So out of high school, I went to a private college for music recording called Trebas in Toronto. I left there after a year, very discouraged, as it was a lot of reading and very little sort of hands-on, which is really, really important if you want to learn this craft. I then applied to Fanshawe College's Music Industry Arts program, which is a 2-year recording engineer program. Very, very hands-on. I kind of learned more in the first few weeks of being at Fanshawe than I learned my entire year at Trebas, so that shows you the importance of that. In between my first and second year, I got a job at a sound and lighting company as a tech. And I fell in love with it, and I decided right then that was what I was going to do for a career. So after my second year, I sold my drums, and I moved into doing live sound full time. So what I wanted to talk about and what I think is important, I'm lucky because I started off as a musician. I kind of can speak your language, and now that I'm a technician, obviously I speak a technical language as well. But if you guys out there want to be in this on a professional level, you're going to have to know both as well, because you're going to have to interact with technicians. And in doing so, you need to kind of be able to speak their language. So if you want to sort of interact with them effectively, so if they throw a word at you, then, you know, I'm going to go through a bunch of this stuff with you, but so you'll know what they're talking about, and vice versa. So I don't want this to be a webinar. I want to encourage as many questions as possible. I will try to answer them as best I can. Like I said, I don't know everything. I'm a life learner, you know, because of COVID as a, you know, we're all kind of relearning everything because we have to do it differently. But yeah, there's no silly questions out there. Anything you want to ask, we're cool with that. All right, so moving on. So the first thing I wanted to touch on is stage direction. So stage direction is stuff like stage left, stage right, that kind of thing. So those of you who don't know what that is, and it's really, this is super important. This is the basic stuff that you guys to know as part of your stagecraft, is stage left and stage right. What does that mean? Okay, so just so you know the history of all this stuff, this all comes from theater. All this jargon and all this terminology is all theater-based stuff. So when we say stage left, stage right, what do we mean? So stage left and stage right is from the point of view of you standing on stage, looking out at the audience. For instance, that is my stage left, or sorry, that is stage left, because I'm standing on the stage looking out at you, the audience. And that would be stage right, okay? There's another one. There's upstage and downstage. So a little bit more history about that. When theaters first started, they didn't have tiered seating. Instead, they had the stage was low in the front and high in the back, which weird today when you think about it. Instead of having the audience, you know, go here and up, they had the stage start low and go high, so you could see, so people in the audience could see people in the back. So that's where we have upstage, downstage. So downstage would be farther down towards the audience, and upstage would be up to the back part of the stage. So that's where upstage and downstage go. So for instance, if I say downstage center, that's usually where your lead singer would live, right down in front. Downstage, in the center. There's also house left and house right. Now that's basically the opposite. So pretend you are in the house, an audience member, then your left would be house left and your right would be house right, right? And also front of house, that is FOH, they call it, short form. That is usually where the sound and lighting team or all the technicians that are doing sound and lights sit, front of house. You'll see them, if you go to a large concert, they'll be barricaded in there and they'll be on risers and all that kind of stuff to be able to see above the audience and see the stage. All right, I don't know, are we taking questions or does anybody have any questions about any of that stuff? I can field that. If not, we can move on. I can have a sip of my coffee. Where did I put my coffee, Karen? Is that me there? I hope so. It is. Oh, all right. Thank goodness.
We've got one question in the chat here, Vons. What are some good do's and don'ts for event production? Things performance should avoid or keep in mind?
Oh, geez.
Oh, big.
Well,
show up with all your gear.
Well, why don't you come over here? This is. I mean, we run into this a lot.
Yes. Batteries.
Yeah, like I mean, you should have a checklist before you walk out the door.
Checklist.
You should make sure you have, you know, you got some extra strings, whether you play a bass or a guitar. You should sometimes some people even bring a second guitar, which is not, you know, if you want to, you know, bring your good guitar, leave your sort of crappy guitar in the car in case you absolutely need it. But sometimes you might need that. Extra patch cables. And if if it's not working, that one gig, take it out and don't ever use it again. And don't ever try to bend it and tape it so it works, because that's just you're just asking for a disaster to happen. And eventually, we'll go through this later, that cable will stop working altogether, and then you're going to be out of a gig. It's going to, exactly. You'll be done. You'll have to step aside. What else?
Check in with the tech team. This is
Yeah.
where the jargon and terminology is important. If we were doing the showcases, for instance, for MCI, it might be the first time that some of your members have played in a festival type situation or on a larger stage. It's important to always check in, find out what's up, check in early, don't be late.
Yeah, that's I can't say enough about that. I'm sorry to tell you, but like for the most part, musicians don't show up on time.
We were late today.
We were. Sometimes technicians are late as well, but we're going to turn this around. OMCI is going to turn this around, and that's not going to be the case anymore. But more often than not, that's the case, and it really starts this relationship on a bad foot. Because when you do that, when you're showing up late, you're basically saying to the person that's waiting for you that, hey, you know what? I'm late. I don't care. I don't respect your time. That's what you're saying when you show up late. And if you're going to show up late, and if you know that's going to happen, stop by Tim Hortons and get some coffee and get some donuts and say, I'm really sorry I'm late. Here you go, guys. And it's amazing what can be forgiven if you show up with coffee. All right? Well, and certainly don't show up with a coffee late. That's the worst.
For
only yourself. You're just like, you're just wanting to be choked then. I don't know what else. What do you think?
Just being prepared. Find out if the audio engineer is expecting your equipment to have a pickup, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I mean, just your gear in general. You should test your gear, especially if you got a major thing coming up, and just set all your stuff up, double check your pedals, double check all your cables are working. If one is kind of iffy, if you know how to fix it, great. If you don't, head to the store and buy another one, or borrow and steal one from a friend, but don't show up with gear that may or may not let you down. That's another, you're wasting other people's time too. And you have to remember, in a festival situation, there's a finite amount of time that you have to do your sound check. Sometimes you don't even get a full sound check. You get what's called a line check, where they just go, your guitar's working, great, next. Check, good. I mean, it's literally, you have about a minute to do a quick line check, and then you're on. So if you're there buggering around with your gear, you're eating into that time where you could be getting a line check, or even a proper sound check where you get to do like a half a song or something like that, something to make sure you're going to be comfortable on stage. Unfortunately, festivals are rapid fire. It's like on, off, on, off, on, off until they get to the headliner. Then they take their own sweet time. But I mean, if you're an opening act, you got to be on and off, or it's like, oh, you took too long. They will cut you. I've been on shows where they cut you out. You're taking too long. You're done. Yeah. You're off. Next, they bring on the next guy. So, and that would suck totally if you showed up ready to go and then this was happening to you. So that's super important. And I can't push that enough.
On a smaller scale, you can find out what production is being provided. So you can investigate in that as well. If you're playing at a bar or a restaurant, find out what is going to be provided is definitely a good idea.
Yeah.
Will there be a sound tech?
Yeah, sometimes you might be on your own, and if that's the case, if the place is local to you, why not show up to the venue, check out what they have. If the owner is there and you say, hi, I'm so and so, I'm going to be playing this week, and I just wanted to see what equipment you had so we could get familiar with it, so we're not kind of trying to figure it out at the last second. Because a lot of times these house systems are in varying degrees of disrepair. Some things don't work, or it's like, oh, that guy told me there was microphones, and guess what, there's no microphones. So if you knew that ahead of time, you would have brought your own microphone or brought your own whatever it might be. So that's another thing that's really important. if you're playing a festival and getting ready, you really should have a rider, even at the lowest levels, a rider. But more specifically, I'm talking about the technical rider, not the bowl of M&Ms with the brown ones removed kind of thing, none of that kind of stuff. But more so your input list, what instruments you have, what kind of microphones you require, and a stage plot where everybody is on the stage, showing, okay, the drummer's here, audience is here, so people know that where stage left, stage right is, and who's upstage, who's downstage, because we like to know that information because it allows us to prepare for you. So, a lot of times, like say if you're the only person, band there that night, then we can say, okay, there's their stage plot, and we can start wiring the stage before you even get there and get ahead of the game. And that allows you, when you get there, to get set up and sound check quicker and have more sound check time, which is a nice thing to have. So anyway, that's pretty much all the bitching I have. More coffee. Do we have any more questions?
There's one in here, but you kind of already covered a bunch of it. Is what's your biggest pet peeve when dealing with artists?
Well, there you go. Yeah, we definitely we did. We took the long road on that one, but yeah, we got to it.
Okay, so that's it for the questions in the chat so far.
Okay.
Okay, cables.
So the next thing I'm going to cover is microphones. So microphones, there are three main types. There's dynamic, there is condenser, and there's ribbon. So what we use in live sound are dynamic and condensers. Not very often will you use a ribbon microphone. Ribbon microphones are more of a recording studio thing. They're very delicate. If they get bumped or they fall, they get destroyed really easily. So they're not very roadworthy. So as an example, this would be a dynamic microphone right here. Let's see if Karen can zoom in on this. Let's check out her camera skills. Yes. It's not, if I stand here. There you go. That's a Shure SM58. For those who don't know what that is, that's the most popular microphone on the planet right there. Nothing has been sold more microphones than this one. And there's a reason why. It's a road dog. You can hammer a nail in this, and I'm not even joking. You could hammer a nail in with this and then use it in the show. It's that roadworthy. It's that robust. And it sounds really good too. For instance, the boss, Bruce Springsteen, I saw a video that interviewed the front of house guy for him. And they tried every single microphone, vocal microphone there is out there on Bruce Springsteen. And he likes this one. And this one's $100. And there's ones that are, thousands of dollars. But he likes this one. And there's a man that can choose any microphone he wants, and he chooses this. So if this is good enough for Bruce Springsteen, it's going to be good enough for you. The next kind is the condenser microphone, and they come in two flavors. There's a large diaphragm. Sorry, this is doesn't work anymore. But anyway, this is something you might see at a recording studio. It'll have a pop filter in front of it, kind of thing, so you can sing into it. It's large diaphragm. It's used for a lot of different things, for vocals, obviously, but also stringed instruments, things that have you want that nice breathy, airy sound. This is the microphone you're going to need because it's more sensitive in that frequency range. The other one, also a condenser mic, is what's called a small diaphragm, which is this one. These are great on acoustic guitars. Let me stand like this. Focus on me. These are great on acoustic guitars. Also, any stringed instrument that doesn't have a pickup on it already. Overheads, cymbals, hi-hats, that kind of thing. We use that. And actually, I don't know if Karen can pick up what's happening up my drum set there. I actually have some overhead with some small diaphragm microphones already right there. So there's another cool thing about that. Those kind of microphones use what's called phantom power. So have you ever seen the 48V on anything, on a console? as an example on here, let me see this right here. Can you zoom in here, Karen? Right there. I don't know if you can see that, but anyway, that is a fan and power switch. So what that is these kinds of microphones require 48 volts to be powered. And without that, they don't work. So that's what fan and power is. It's called fan and power, 48 volts, whatever. It's the same thing. So that's some jargon that you're going to need to know. If someone asks, if you have a DI, they'll ask you, does it need fan and power? Or if you have a microphone, they'll ask, does it need fan and power? Some preamps also require, for acoustic guitars, they require fan and power. So when someone asks you that, now you know what it is. Where are we? So unfortunately, ribbon mics, we don't have them. We never use them. I've never seen one used in a live show, and if it did, it probably didn't last to the end. What else? Okay, yeah. So and there's also different usage. So the 58, that's what's considered a handheld. Obviously, you can hold it in your hand. Here's the wireless version of it. That's also a 58, but it's the wireless. You can hold it in your hand. Obviously, there's a clip for it too. You can throw that on a microphone stand. There's also lavaliers or a lav, as it's called in short form, and that's this thing right there. If you want to zoom in on this, that's a lavalier microphone, and they come in different sizes as well. For this kind of thing, like an interview or something like that, you'd use this on any talk show. You'd notice that the host and all the guests, they all wear this microphone. There's also a PZM, which stands for pressure zone microphone, which is also a boundary microphone. This one right here is just that thing. This is a Beta 91A. This is an awesome microphone for your kick drum. It's expensive. It's hovering in around $300 for this thing, but a lot of rock music is done with this. Like a lot of rock kick drums are recorded with this microphone. So basically what happens is that you have a pillow inside your kick drum. This gets laid on top like that, right inside. And it gives this massive sound that, when you hear it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Like I said, and like a lot of different albums have been recorded using this microphone. And it's a staple, an absolute staple in live sound as well. All right. I think the last one I think is I was going to talk about was headset microphones. Yes. Now, people call this the Madonna mic. I know I might be dating myself because some of you may not know who Madonna is. But Madonna, massive pop star. If you guys are in the music industry, you know music, you probably know her. But anyway, she made this kind of microphone very, very popular. It's not this exact one. The one she was using was made by Sony, I believe, but she's the one that made this popular. Now, a lot of artists that do more than just sing, someone like Pink, for instance, there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of dancing. They would wear something like this. So that would allow them to move, yoga instructors like this thing, aerobics instructors, people that can't hold on to something, they have to be moving, would use a microphone like this.
Show how, no headband, show how it's put on.
Yeah. So you can see how it kind of goes behind my head. I mean, for those of you that are on Facebook with me, you'll notice that I at one time I put, people don't know how to do this. Sometimes they do this. So, make sure that you talk to somebody about how it goes. You don't want to look like a stupid person and come in like this, where they come over the top of your head, because that just looks silly. And many people have, and many people have been on TV doing that, which is awesome. Anyway, I wanted to also talk about that you guys will come up, run into all the time, and that is a direct box, or what people call a DI. The DI stands for direct injection. And basically what it's supposed to do, it takes an unbalanced high impedance signal and converts it to a balanced low impedance signal. So what does that mean? So basically it takes, for example, you'd have, it could be a bass guitar, the output of a bass guitar, the output of a keyboard, the output of an acoustic guitar that has a pickup. All those things are unbalanced high impedance sources, signal sources. So when you run, when you have a 1/4 inch cable, I'm going to talk about this later on, but a 1/4 inch, because it's unbalanced, you cannot run it long distances without it picking up a lot of noise. I wouldn't go more than 25 feet with a patch cable, a guitar patch cable. Not a good idea. It'll be picking up all kinds of noise along the way. It's really susceptible to that. EMI, which stands for electromagnetic interference, which is all around us all the time. It'll start picking that stuff up, and then that's what you're going to be hearing out of your guitar amp, or that's what the sound guy's going to hear at front of house if you use something like that. So the DI, and it comes in a multitude of flavors. There's an active version and a passive version. The passive version is one that does not need phantom power, and those are the cheapest. The active version requires 48 volt phantom power, so that's the difference for that. And usually the ones that are active, because it's active circuitry, it's going to give you a higher quality sound for sure. So you can see here, over here at Multitech Audiovisual, we have a bunch of them. I have, stuff for instruments. This one is active, and sorry, this is passive, and it's mono because it's only got one output. This one's active, and it's stereo. So if you were using, you could use that for like a keyboard, left and right. So you don't have to run two. You already have one. It's all ready to go. A couple of cool things that are on these are, for instance, there's what's called a pad. That's another terminology that you're gonna have to learn. Pad is basically a resistance. So if I want to bring the volume down, say you plug into this thing, and say it's a keyboard, for instance, and it's got some really good output. It's loud, and it's overloading, and it's too much for front of house. Front of house is like, I'm turned my gains all the way down, and I'm still getting too much signal. Well, then you just pop these pad buttons in here, and that drops the signal by, in this case, minus 15 dB, which is a lot. But then that will give the person front of house enough wiggle room to be able to then turn you up again, instead of having you all the way down and it's still being distorted or at an uncontrollable signal level. So that's important. There's also a ground switch here. So I'm going to explain ground as best I can. That ground lift switch, you'll notice that sometimes when you plug into these devices, you'll get a buzz. And the reason why is that when you connect to a device like this, you're connecting yourself, you're grounding yourself through multiple things. You're grounding yourself through your amplifier. Say you're a bass player. You're playing bass, you got plugged into this, and this is also connected to your amplifier. So that's one way to ground yourself. That's one path to ground. But also, because you're connected to this, and it goes out this microphone jack to the console out front, now you're also connected to that. You're grounded to that. So you're grounded here, and you're grounded there. And that's what usually causes that buzz. Sometimes there's no problem at all. You don't hear that buzz for whatever reason. But when you do, that's how to get rid of it. You lift that ground, and then now it kills the ground that's going to that connection, the ground connection going to front of house, but maintains your ground going to your amplifier. So very important.
Hey,
so like I said again, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We've got a few questions in the chat here.
Sure.
First one here. What type of mic would you say is best for wood or wind instruments?
Definitely a condenser. Absolutely. Yeah, because there's a lot of nice air, what we refer to as air, which is that really nice top end that you will not capture with like a 58 or 57. I mean, all these things have their thing that they're great for, but it's not like a one size fits all kind of thing. I wouldn't use a 58 on a violin unless if I didn't have any other microphone, of course you would. But if you have a choice, then, this is where you want to go. That's the stuff right there. That's awesome. That'll make it sound really good. And like, well, any stringed instrument at all actually would sound amazing like this with this microphone. Next.
Perfect. Here's another one. What are the best picks for a bass amp? So what
Picks?
kind of
that I can't tell you. I'm a drummer. I don't know what the best pick is.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think he means like picks as in guitar picks, but maybe
Oh,
like
okay.
a microphone, or just continuation here. Would you use one for the speaker cone and a separate one for the tweeter?
For what kind of instrument was it again? A bass?
Yeah, so I think he's miking a bass amp, and he wants to
Oh, okay,
know.
yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, they'll engineers do both. So they'll take the signal they get from a DI, right? Because the way a DI works, right? The musician plugs in here into the input, and then the output goes to their amplifier. So they can still use their amp, but that signal can also go to your sound guy or to the mixing console via XLR, which is my cable in the back. So what a lot of guys do is they'll take the direct sound, and they'll also put a microphone on the bass cabinet and capture that too, because well, just like a guitar, you know what I mean? It's like a guitar amp. Guitar player will tell you like the direct sound of an electric guitar is super lame, right? It doesn't have any character to it, but you put it through an amplifier and it comes alive. Same thing with a bass. I mean, so combining the direct sound, which gives you a lot of the low end, right? Tons of low end. You probably have to turn it down, and then you combine that with a bass amp sound that you've mic'd. That kind of gives you that that edge, that bite, that it really helps a bass sort of cut through in a mix. Because I mean, if you have this low end, it's all you're hearing is low end. It's not going to sit in the mix all the time. You need to have those mid-range frequencies, and that's what the amplifier is going to help you with. It brings out those things, like I said, and you can combine those things, and you can delay them so they're time aligned. You can get all into all this other stuff too, but just having that combination, you'll find. I mean, whenever I do recordings or mixes from recordings, and all I have is a DI, I will reamp that. Not a true reamp, but I'll take that track, duplicate it, and then I'll put an amp emulator on it to give me some other kind of tone that you can work with that's not just this direct sound. But more often than not, I mean, if you're stuck with a sound to do, the direct sound, the DI is probably the best bet for sure, because it gives you, the full spectrum, whereas a mic'd bass amp is not going to give you the kind of low end that you're going to get out of a DI.
Right.
All right.
Okay. Cool. Maybe one more, and then I'll let you continue on.
Sure.
Okay, so do you usually just use a DI with the bass guitar, or do you sometimes mix it with a mic signal? Oh, I think you just answered that. Sorry, my bad.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you, I think you answered that as well. Would large diaphragms be good for drum overheads as well?
Yeah. But, from us mere mortals that can't afford those things, I mean, when you start getting into large diaphragm microphones, you can move from, the $100 or whatever dollars to the hundreds of dollars to the thousands of dollars, depending on your budget. For instance, a microphone like that, which is the Shure KSM 137, they're around $400 or $500, right? So they're great, but I mean, when you start getting into these, like, I mean, if you look at the old, like for instance, if you look at old Zeppelin, live Zeppelin, you'll notice these are out there. The U87, which is made by Uri. Yeah. No, Neumann U87, which is like the staple for recording vocals in the recording world. But in that video, remember that they'd have a couple of these on the overheads. They would use that for, you don't see it a lot live because it is big, right? It's big and bulky. And sometimes that's not aesthetically pleasing to have a microphone that's that big over your drum set. That's why they go for, the smaller diaphragm condensers. But yes, for sure. I've seen these. I've gone to go see Rush, and these larger diaphragm microphones were over his kit capturing his cymbals. So it does happen. But I said, for us mere mortals, for the most part, the smaller diaphragm stuff works the best because of budget. Anything else?
It's up to you. I can keep feeding you questions, or if you wanted to continue.
Sure. If you got some more, we'll take them.
Cool. You might have touched upon this already, but what are the best picks or best microphones for loud singing like Demi Lovato or Christina Aguilera?
Okay. Like I said, 58. SM58 for most things is going to work, because that thing could take a lot of SPL. You can put that in front of a guitar cabinet that is like screaming loud, and it won't distort. It has enough headroom on it that it's going to be okay. So that's for right now, from where you guys are living, that's going to be your baby right there. There's also another one that's close to this, very, very close as far as its ruggedness and stuff like that. It's the Beta 58, which that has a little bit more top end to it. So people might like it a little bit more because it's got a bit of a boost in the high mid range, which kind of can bring out your voice a little bit better, makes it a little more airy sounding, like we were talking about before. So, like I said, there's so many to choose from. And it's all budget dependent, But like I said, there's Bruce Springsteen, that's one of the richest musicians in the world, and he likes this one, and that you can get at your music store for a little over $100. And like I said, you can drop it and you can use it. You can put a nail in with it, and then you can go sing in it. It's awesome. So I would, and like I said, it all has to do with the amount of SPL, which SPL is sound pressure level. So the amount of volume that thing can take before it bottoms out or starts distorting. This thing is like it's indestructible, unless you put it underwater, maybe. Like I said, lots of different choices. Like I said, depending on your budget. I mean, Neumann makes a lot of microphones that people are liking to use now, but very expensive, in the thousands of dollars for a vocal microphone. So, like I said, us mere mortals we can't afford that. That's why we like the 58.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the 57 and 58s. I use them pretty much exclusively.
Yeah, like a lot of major recordings are done with the 57 as well. It's close, and it's been the choice for that particular microphone. It's been the choice for guitar amps and snare mics forever, and even tom mics, for drum mics in general. That's been around for longer than you've been alive.
Oh yeah,
longer than I've been alive.
Yeah,
those microphones came out in the 50s and 60s.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure if you go into any studio or even anybody's home studio, you're gonna find the 57s, 58s, even the betas. Mm-hmm. So we got another one. What is the best portable amp for busking in your opinion?
See, I'm kind of, because our stuff is more on the pro level. We don't deal with sort of all-in-one, where it's the mixer and it's the amplifier and it's all that different stuff. We break everything out into its components usually. Well, now with digital, it's a bit different. But for the most part, like I said, we don't do these all-in-one things. I'd like to comment on that, but I'm pretty out of the loop. I know that Behringer stuff, because we deal with Behringer a lot, and they make those things along with Mackie. Mackie's another sort of reputable company when it comes to those all-in-one things. Yorkville Sound, which is I guess the Audio Pro stuff. I don't know what they call it, because I know they have different tiers, but all that stuff is very usable, right? It depends what you want to do, like what, because I mean, some of them have, like for instance, you might get one of those all-in-one things that it has all this stuff on it, right? So it's got whatever, 6 channels or 8 channels, and it's got some effects on it. It's got a little bit of an EQ here, so you can get rid of some feedback if you're having an issue with that, and it's all in a rack, and on the back is obviously speaker outputs, so you can then plug it into some speakers, right? Or line outs, like this thing here. This thing has line outputs, so this doesn't have speaker outputs. It has line outputs. I'm going to get into that in a little bit, what that means, but this would need to go to either an amplifier and then go to a speaker, or go to if you look down here, Karen, can you go shoot this thing down here? The speaker? Yeah, down there. So that's a powered speaker. So that would have XLRs in the back too. So I would plug out of here directly into that, and you'd get sound out of it. All right.
Vaughn?
Yes.
Can you speak to, if they were going to save up to purchase an all-in-one, what would be the minimum they'd want for the aux and all of those?
Yeah, so like I said, depending on, let's say you're You just like maybe like a duo or a trio. You'd want obviously enough channels, right? So you'd want to make sure that you had enough channels for everybody. So if you got three people that sing and three instruments, that you obviously this would be perfect because this is 6 channels right here. Another good thing to look for would be to have any kind of a EQ. If you see this graphic EQ here, I'll lift it up a little bit so you can see it better. That's what's called a graphic EQ. This one is what's called a 1 octave band. So it goes up, it goes 125, 250, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 8,000. So it's not super precise. So when you're doing this, you're taking out big chunks of the frequency range. So frequency spectrum, sorry. So you got to be, you don't want to be too heavy-handed with that. But a great thing to have would be to have one of these, and I've seen these on these those units that you're talking about. You'll have one of these for the mains, and you'll have a secondary one that's for your monitors, and that's really, really important. If I was to choose where I wanted this, because on this particular console, you can choose between whether you want it to be on the mains, or you want it to be on the monitor output, which is here. I would do the monitor because you've got a microphone and it's going to be right in front of a speaker. So you want to have as much tonal control as you possibly can, especially because that's going to be, if anything's going to feed back, it's going to be that before your front of house is going to feed back, because, well, we'll talk about that later too. The proper placement of these things, it's like, don't put your speaker here. You want to put your speaker, slightly ahead of you facing the audience. But that would be one thing. Fan and power, right? This console has fan and power. You switch that in, and then every single input here has fan and power on it. You can't switch it in between, which is kind of a drag because you don't always need it. And when you unplug, if you unplug something that has fan and power on it, and you have it live still, it goes bang, like it'll wake you up really quick, bang, when that fan and power is on still. So you got to be careful with that. More so than, like if I had an XLR, if I had just a regular microphone in here and unplugged it, you wouldn't even hear it. It would just be like, you hear a slight sound. But if it's got fan and power on it and you unplug it, it goes bang. And most people only do that one time because it scares the crap out of them. So that would be another thing. Right here, you've got, let's go from the top here. So you've got a microphone input. See that okay? All right. And we can switch, obviously, we can make any of these fan and power. This switches this to a high impedance input, so that can take a line input as well, which we'll talk about later as well. But moving down here, so here you've got a balanced or unbalanced line input here. So that means if you're close enough, if you're doing small gigs, you don't have to go through a DI and then out of an XLR and then into here. You can just go directly into there. If you've got a keyboard, just go directly in there. If you're not far away, just it's just the 3 of you, and the console's 10 feet or closer, then that's all you got to do. Just go use the line input. It's better than having to go through all that other stuff. Insert, where you would need that, and I'll show you the cable that you need to pull that off. But basically, if this is the signal path where this is the input and that's the output, the insert can redirect the signal for you. So for instance, if you wanted to use a compressor, or if you wanted to do, I don't know, maybe use a delay, you could use it like that too, where you disrupt the signal path, you force the signal path to go through whatever that is, like I said, an EQ or a compressor or a noise gate or whatever it is, and then it comes back, and it's all in one cable, done with a tip ring sleeve cable, in and out, into the unit, out of the unit, and back again. Here is your gain. So it's got quite you want something with a half decent range where, if it's a really, really quiet microphone, then you can be able to, boost it enough, but enough in the other direction that if it's a really hot signal, you can turn it down. Here we've got, this is a very simple 3-band EQ here. It's basically high, mid, and low. These are all fixed points, so you can't change them. but it's, like I said, it's useful enough. You know, this is at 12,000 hertz, which is, you know, your treble. Down here is at, what is it, 80, which is probably a little lower than I would go. I would have chosen something completely different for these set frequency points, because that's not really useful. You know, I would make that 500 hertz. I would have made this like 100 hertz or something like that. Oh, one thing I missed here. So that, anyway, that's your EQ there. Like I said, on the larger consoles, these can get very, very complex, where you have control of not only the gain of that frequency, what that frequency is, it'll be a range that you can choose from. And then not only that, once you've chosen that, you can control the bandwidth of that. So if you've chosen, say you've chosen 1K or 1000 hertz, you can have it really, really narrow, that filter, super, super narrow, or you can have it like what's called a bell, right? So it goes like that. So really wide. So when you're boosting at 1000 hertz, you're actually, and you've got it wide, you're actually boosting all that other stuff along with it too. And that's what's happening here with this, that this is going to be really wide. I mean, so when you do that, you're taking out, not only are you taking out 2500 hertz, you're also taking out a lot of everything else on either side of that frequency. So you got to be careful. You got to, you know, don't be too heavy-handed with it. Well, here's one thing I missed right here. I don't know, maybe I should bring it closer so you guys can see it. Can you zoom in on where my finger is, Karen? You can see that? That there is, they call that high pass filter. That goes by another name too. What is it? I forgot. Oh, low cut. Another name they cut for it. So this is super useful. So if you are a vocalist, this is going to be your friend right here. You want to use this. You want to use this a lot for anything that doesn't have bass in it. Guitar, I would switch that in. Acoustic or electric, I'd make sure that's in. Bass guitar, obviously not, because you're going to be cutting a lot of low end off it. Vocals, definitely. You know, woodwinds and stringed instruments, like, you know, like cellos and violins, definitely, most definitely have that in. Like I said, on the bigger consoles, this is something that can be varied. So I'm banging my microphone here. Can you hear me okay now? So on the larger consoles, that is something that can be varied anywhere from, you know, 30 hertz all the way up to like 500 hertz and everything in between. So depending on what the source is, you might want to vary, you know, you might want to take more bottom end off it. For instance, if I was to do, I'd want a high pass filter or a low cut, whatever you prefer, on that microphone there, the overheads. I don't need the bass drum coming through there. I don't need a lot of snare and toms coming through there. The way I do it anyway. Other people do it differently. I just kind of want to capture the cymbals, and the cymbals don't have any bottom end in it. There's no bottom end in there whatsoever. So when you don't want to add that. So when you've got a high pass filter, you can get rid of all this stuff. That it's really, really simple to do. And you can clean up the mix of your band or yourself considerably just by using that one thing. It gets rid of, like, if you find that your voice is too boomy or whatever, you hit that button and that will go away for the most part, depending on where it's set. Or if you're able to set it, then set it to where that cleans up your voice a bit. And then it cleans up the guitar a bit. And then it cleans up the overheads a bit. And all these different things that you can use it on. Very, very useful. If I was to have any filter, if I had it, someone said you can choose any filter, what would it be? That would be it. That can solve a lot of your problems right away. And talking about using it for monitors as well. Like usually when you hit that button, that signal is cut off for your monitors as well as the front of house. So it'll get rid of in the monitors instead of having to go over here now and, like, you know, do more EQ to get rid of that, pulling this down and that down or whatever. That one button will do all that stuff for you. And it's also better too, because for everything you do here, you're degrading the signal. Every time you use a filter, you're degrading the signal a little bit. You're causing some phasing and stuff like that, because that's what these filters are. They're phasing things out. So like I said, less is more when it comes to this stuff. But having said that, there's no rules. That's the great thing about recording and mixing and stuff like that. You know, there's guidelines, but there's no rules, and and different people have different sort of takes on how to go about it. I have my own thing that works for me, but some people might approach live sound or recording in a completely different way. So anyway, is there more questions?
Yeah, continuation on that idea with the low pass. Would you use that for like recording? If you're recording an album at home or something, that this might help you later on with solving some of the problems you might have been already addressing with EQ, I guess?
Yes. A lot of people, like I said, they go in afterwards. But when you record, like I said, less is more. Like if you're gonna do that, but especially when you're recording, then you better be happy with that choice, because there's no going back from that, right? If you record that way, that's it. I'm talking more of a live sound thing, where that's what I use to get rid of all that stuff, because you can imagine all the buildup that you're getting. Okay, there's a lot of buildup if those overheads have too much bottom end, and then the snare mic has too much bottom end, and then the hi-hat's got too much bottom end, like accumulation of all that stuff, and then you can start hearing it's all muddy and it's all crappy, and and nothing's distinct and nothing has clarity. It's all muddy and gross. Once you start plugging those things in, it all of a sudden, oh, I can hear the bass notes now, or oh, I can hear the guitar better, or whatever. It just starts cleaning things up a bit more, and the things that are supposed to live in there, like like your bass guitar or your kick drum, get to live down there, and everything else, you basically move it out and get it and plunk it in a spot where it has to live. Because like I said, there's not a lot of space in the left and right world that we live in, right? There's only so much space you have. So you gotta pick your place where you want that thing to live. You can't have everything louder than everything else. I know it's a funny thing to say, but that's what ends up happening. It's like, you turn this up. Oh, no, it's not drowning that out. I'm going to turn that up. And it's like you're just fighting and fighting and fighting. So that's one of the things that can help you with that filter, that low pass, high pass filter, low cut filter, whatever you want to call it. Anyway.
Okay, cool.
Continuing.
Thank you. Here's another question here. What are some of the big no-nos that a lot of singers don't realize that they do regularly? Things to avoid that people, so it's just repeating what they said there.
Okay, let me tell you.
Telecom.
What? Say something. What do you want to say?
Oh, show the device to take off the effects.
Oh, yeah, I'll get to that. So this is super important, okay? You hip hop guys out there that insist on holding a microphone like this. That's such a terrible idea. You're really doing yourself a disservice for your monitors, for your own sound, and the sound for the audience, because that does two things. I'm just going to open up this microphone for you here, and hopefully Karen will be able to zoom in on it. Can you, if I hold it right here, I want you to zoom in like right here if you can. Here, let me come a little closer. Okay, so you can see this black part here, like right below that is a series of ports. I know they're hard to see, but those ports is what gives this thing its directionality. So back out again. So I'll have to go through that now too. But when you do that, when you do this, and you cover that those ports up, that turns this microphone omnidirectional. And if you know what that means, is instead of picking up in the direction of the front of the microphone, which in this case is here, and this is what's called a cardioid microphone pattern, it picks up in kind of like what I would call like a mushroom shape almost, right? You could consider like it picks up kind of like in this area, right? Kind of like a mushroom head. So when you do that, now it's picking up in an omnidirectional pattern, which is everywhere, all the way around the microphone. And why is that bad? Well, it's bad because now anything you've got in the monitors, you've made this microphone omnidirectional, and now it's way more susceptible to feedback. You do that, and it's going to start squealing like crazy. So if you're going to grab it, grab it there. That's the handle. This is not the handle. That is the handle, and we use it like this. And of course, the sound too. So not only are you making it omnidirectional, but you're also changing the sound quality of the thing. Tonally, it will not sound like a vocal anymore. It'll sound like you're talking through a bullhorn. And for people that are particular about the sound of their voice, that's probably not something they want. Right? Unless you wanted to have an effect like, that you might hear in like a Stone Temple Pilots song or something like that, where he actually talks into a bullhorn and he yells into it. But anyway, that's one thing. Another thing, and actually, Karen, if you can just come down here, just down here where my hand is, point down here. Right? So you got your monitor there. A lot of guys do this. They put their hand down. And what are you doing? You're pointing the microphone right at the monitor. You're giving it a direct path to feedback, and it will rip your head off. And like I said, people only do that maybe once or twice, and they get blasted by it really, really loud, and they learn their lesson. But a lot of guys do that. Or if they come to talk to somebody, or they give high fives or whatever, don't let this mic drop. You do this like this, go to high five somebody, you're pointing that microphone right in the monitor, and it's going to squeal and rip your head off. So that's a big no-no. What else? I think those are the two major ones for me anyway. And I've seen it happen so many times.
Off the mic.
Oh, when you're doing your own sound and you have a little mixing board, if you can, there's ones that have foot pedals where you can turn the effects on and off. That's a major pet peeve of mine, to have your banter with your audience, talk to the audience, and have the effects on, especially if there's delay. I call it delay. People call it echo as well. But to have that going on while you're supposed to be having a conversation with somebody, or tons of reverb on your voice, sounds great when you're singing, not so much when you're trying to talk. So if you can, we've got a bunch of these things. It's made by a company called TC Helicon, which is Canadian, by the way. This is the Perform V. So basically, your microphone goes directly into this thing, and then out of this thing into your mixing console. But on the front of this thing, if I can open it real quick here, if I can figure out how the box works. Zoom in on that. Where's that button? Yeah, see that? Right there is the talk button. So you hit that button when you want to talk, and then it mutes all the effects. And then when you want to sing, you turn it on again, turn it off again. And another good thing is, look at this. See this tap here? So depending on the tempo of the song that you're doing, you could quickly tap that to the tempo, and then any echoes you have will echo in time with the beats per minute of the song, or the tempo of the song. Very, very, if you guys are going to play live, if you're doing like a solo thing, this is awesome. The effects sound amazing. Like I said, and you have complete control over this. Yeah. This thing here, I don't know if you can see the edge here, that's where it connects to your microphone stand. So it connects right in there. And it sits like that. You can change effects. You can, there's presets here for different songs and all kinds of things. It even has like it has a pitch thing too. And I think you control this with, it has a pedal, right? So if you got the pedal with it, then you could, that talk feature where you turn off the effects, is an easy press with your foot. So you can talk to people. Okay, my next song's going to be this, or thanks so much for coming out, or whatever the case may be, right? Like I said, but the effects when you're talking to people, I hate it.
Get it on your Christmas list.
Yes.
Sorry, one more time. What was the name of that again?
This is TC Helicon. Actually, TC Helicon Perform V. Now, there's a bunch of different ones too. I think there's a Perform KV. So if you play keyboard, if you're a keyboard and vocals at the same time. I think there's a GV for guitar and vocals if you're an acoustic guitar player and sing. So it does double duty for that. You've got control over the effects for your voice and your instrument as well. So pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. I would definitely recommend this. And it's got a headphone output too. So you can practice your instrument, and not have it amplified, and listen to it in headphones if you like. Highly recommended. Any more questions for me?
None at the moment.
Okay.
But maybe we'll just continue on, and maybe they'll think of something.
Okay. So where did I leave off? Okay. So we covered direct boxes. So yeah. So the next thing in the jargon would be backline. For those who don't know what backline is basically anything on the stage that isn't sound, lights, or video. So that would mean drum kit, that's considered backline. Guitar amp, bass amp, backline. Keyboards or any other instrument be considered backline. Where this is important is on a rider, especially if you have a traveling act where they don't always travel with their instruments. They might travel with a guitar, but they might not travel with a specific amplifier that they need, like whatever, a Fender Twin or whatever, or an Ampeg SVT or whatever, because those are huge. Maybe they're traveling in a van. Maybe they're traveling in a tour bus, and these things don't fit in those things. Or they will ask for a specific drum set. They might bring what they call, breakable, which is the cymbals. They might bring all that stuff, but they might require the local backline company to provide them a drum kit with whatever, a 5-piece, a 10-piece, or whatever it might be. All the specifics and sizes are usually be given in the rider, so it'll be no brainer. And of course, the manufacturer too. They'll give you, I want like say a Yamaha recording custom kit or a DW series kit or whatever it might be. Those specifics will be in the rider, so they'll know that this is okay, this is okay, this is okay. And a lot of times they'll say, this is not okay. Whatever, there's a brand, don't ever bring this. That riders specifically say that too, just in case you thought you could get away with getting something cheap. No, that's unacceptable. Anyway, so that's backline. Another thing I wanted to mention is a yellow jacket. We have some right over here. Can you turn all the way down and point over here? Point down here. This is a yellow jacket right here. So what this is a cable mat. So you can drive a car over this, but inside you can run all your cables safely. Can you see the inside of that, Karen, or no? No? Anyway, can I open up this one? Or maybe I can open up this one over here, Karen. And just because it's called a yellow jacket, that's just because of the one brand name, but here you can see inside where the cables travel safely, where they can't get run over.
Little dark.
What?
Little dark, buddy.
Okay. Anyway, so that's a yellow jacket. Distro. Distro is another term you might hear. Distro is short for distribution, and specifically power distribution. And if we go over here, I happen to have a distro right here. So if you see this, this is the input here. Can you zoom in closer? So you can see this is the power input. So these inputs are called cam lock. So they kind of go in and they twist and they lock in and they're waterproof. So you can run, and these things allow you to run hundreds of feet. So if you have like a generator, or you're tying into or you're tying the ends into like a electrical panel, you can run it hundreds of feet and then plug it into this. So what the great thing about this is, instead of having to, when we do bigger shows with you guys, when the showcases and stuff like that, we used to bring this because then we didn't have to run multiple places to get power. It's all here. Like, that's a lot of power. This is enough power to power your house. Actually, power a house and a half. Basically, there's enough power in here. This thing can do what's called a 100 amp 3-phase, which means it's got a ground, a neutral, and 3 hots. And each of those hots can do 100 amps. And for a house, there's only usually two hots. So anyway, that's a distro. Very, very important thing to have if you are doing large tours. And when they do tours like that, there's tons of those things. They're stacked up and stacked up because things use a lot of power in larger concerts. Okay,
So
already.
Sorry, we've got one more question here.
Mhm.
What do you recommend for solo artists when it comes to performing with and without a production team? gear that is bread and butter for a performing musician, also recommended brands for speakers, monitors, stands, etc.
Hmm. Okay, I'll do the first part. Those all-in-one things, they will likely do the trick. Like I said, I don't particularly like them. If you're traveling with a production team, this is what would be preferred, because then they can access it better. With those all-in-one things, they're just the way they sit. Those all-in-one things, they're like this, and that's not really kind of conducive to properly doing sound for a band. You don't want to be standing in front of that doing this. It's not a natural sort of way to do it. This is the natural way to sort of sit down and operate that particular piece of gear. So, like I said, depending on if you're traveling with a technician or not, I would go this way for a technician. If it's all you, then that thing's fine. Then it sits next to you on a table or whatever, easily accessible. Sorry, what was the other half of the question? Oh, brands. Okay, so when you're talking, I think we mentioned them before. Mackie, we have these. We have pretty much the equivalent of this in the Behringer. So this is a Mackie Pro FX 12. It's very affordable. You can get on Amazon for $300 or $400. And it's got everything you would need for the most part. You can get the ones above this will have more channels. Like I said, you might get one that has a graphic EQ for not only the monitors, but for the mains as well. This one, it's switchable between the two, which is so. But we don't, like I said, we don't rent these a lot out to musicians. These are mostly for like do-it-yourselfer people that want to have like a little sound system in their backyard or whatever. Or we also use it for smaller shows as well, when there's just no room to bring in a bigger console. So yeah, Mackie B1, Behringer, and Yorkville sound like we talked about before. Yorkville or Audio Pro. I don't know what the brand name would be, but Yorkville Sound, I believe, is the main company, and Audio Pro, whatever, is the different model number, different model brand.
Speaker brand.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Just to add on to that,
sure.
If you're for people in the chat looking for something that they can take busking, really simple, like a one amp kind of thing that does their vocals and their acoustic guitar really well, I posted a link to Fishman's Loudbox Mini Charge amplifier. That's what I use, and I think sound coming out of that is really great. Yeah. Like
I did last year. We did an event where somebody showed up with one of those, and it's a monitor too. You can run your vocals through it. So he basically said, "Do you mind if I use this?" And I said, "Sure, but I want to have separate control. I want to be able to control your voice and you control your guitar." He's like, "No problem." So he went through that. He was able to control those things separately, and then I got an output as well that I was able to control separately of what he was doing. So it didn't matter what he was doing down here on his little amp. I was able to do what I needed to do without it interfering with me. So I would recommend that for sure. But like I said, a lot of times, if you're running into a technician, I would leave all that stuff in your car. Like once you come in and go and get the lay of the land and say, okay, it looks like they have what we need. I don't have to bring in, my DI and you might want to bring in your own microphone, unless it's like I said, if you're going to buy a microphone, buy a 58. Don't go and buy some Chinese brand because it's cheap. And I got it on Amazon, because when a sound guy looks at that, he just goes, we don't want to deal with that. It's like, it's a complete unknown. And sometimes it's a happy surprise, and hey, it sounds actually pretty good. But for the most part, it doesn't sound very good. It sounds terrible. And then that throws off everything too, because depending on where you are, the sound guy might not have a lot of, might not have a lot of tonal control. So he might not be able to make your vocal sound good as compared to everybody else that's on a 58. So I would just get, it's an industry standard for a reason, because everybody in the industry uses it. So why reinvent the wheel? It's $100 and something at any music store. Why bother trying to find anything else as far as I'm concerned?
Right on. Just a quick question for myself here on that note. Do you see a lot of Electro voices in live setups anymore, or no?
No, electric voice has kind of fallen on the wayside as far as where it at one time it was, it was revered, it was up there. Now, not so much. No, not in the pro level stuff. No, the big players are Shure and Sennheiser, and on the super high end now there's also Neumann, but there's lots of other subsidiary stuff too. There's Audix and what else? Stuff that we use here. Yeah, that's primarily where we have Sennheiser, we have Shure, and we have Audix. Those are the three brands that we carry here that we like, that we've vetted, we've tried it, we liked it, and now that's why we use it. I don't just go out and buy stuff, and do your research too, right? Because not everybody can buy the high-end one, but if you've got something of half decent quality, that's not a bad place to start. You can't have a Neumann U87 to sing into in your home recording studio, because that's $3,500. But you might be able to buy the lower end Neumann for $1,000, or something equivalent that Shure makes. Their KSM series, they have a large diaphragm microphone that sounds amazing, and it's like $500 or $600. So I mean, it's such a you can't say what's the best. Well, the best is what you can afford, really. So I would, like I said, 58 for vocals for sure. And like I said, sorry?
Brands for stands?
Oh, brands for stands.
K&M?
K&M, which say, what is it? It's a weird German name. It's Koenig and Meyer or something like that. Anyway, goes by K&M. That's sort of the standard for microphone stands. It'll never let you down. One thing I would suggest is, specifically for vocalists, is if you're going to get a stand, right? Get a stand that if you're singing and playing an instrument, get one that has a tripod. That way, if it has to extend out, it won't fall over on you. If you get the round basses and you're a tall person and you've got to be far away from the microphone and you've got to extend it, then there's a likelihood that it might topple over. So if you get yourself a tripod, obviously the base of it's a lot wider, less susceptible to it falling over. Also, when you get a boom stand, make sure you get what's called a telescopic boom stand. So instead of having it be fixed this long, right? That's totally annoying. So now you're fixed into that length, right? Like even if you're building up your inventory of stands, say you're gonna start buying stuff for your band, don't ever buy that one. It's cheaper, but it's only good for one thing, and that is to do overheads with. Even that, it's kind of annoying to do. So get the one that's telescopic, which means it can be this short or it can be that long, and everything in between. Instead of being stuck with one size and hope you like it, because imagine trying to make trying to make your toms or something like that. If you didn't have the clip-on mics that we have here, but imagine if you had a microphone on a stand that was that long, and then trying to make the tom, and you'd have these stands. I mean, it just becomes a nightmare of the stands sticking out everywhere. So best to avoid that. And oh yeah, you mentioned about speakers too. One brand I didn't mention that we like is QSC. It's an American company. They have the K series stuff is awesome. They have a K8, they have a K10, they have a K12. Now they have the version 2 now, which is even better because it has even more processing, or what DSP they call it. DSP stands for digital signal processing. So you can do a whole bunch of things. You can do EQ on the speaker. So instead of, like, for instance, like here remember we talked about we only have one EQ, this one graphic EQ. Where do we use it? Do we use it on front of house or monitors? Well, guess what? You could use this for front of house, and you could say, well, I'm just going to EQ my speakers internally, and then you can save that. And you can even hook a computer up to it, and it's like, okay, if I'm doing the duo, I'm going to have it. This is going to be the EQ or whatever I'm going to set up. But if I'm just doing a solo thing, then I like it on this setting. You can totally change all that and save all those settings internally, and then just quickly, select it, enter, and it's ready to go. Amazing technology. Another thing where that's handy, it also, and I won't get into too in depth, but when you have sets of speakers, so you have a main set of speakers here, and then farther down the room, you'll have another set of speakers. Well, when you do that, you have to delay one. So these speakers stay the same, and then you have to delay the signal going to that. So, because what happens is, if sound leaves here and it travels towards that other set of speakers, it's going to arrive there, whatever, a half a second, depending on how far away you are, say a half a second later. And if you don't delay that second set of speakers, then you're going to get that, you know, that, like a snare drum would sound like, you get that instead of, so you have to delay it. So the great thing about these newer speakers now is you can put that delay in there, and you don't have to worry about having to run a second set of lines specifically to those speakers and then delaying them and all this other stuff. Anyway, I know that's the advanced course. I'm sorry.
No sweat.
Speaker placement?
Okay. I want to get through some of this other stuff first, because I do want to set up. We're going to set up a speaker. We're going to set up a microphone. We're going to show you how to do that, because that's important. So where do we leave off? Okay. So another term is in the red. So when someone says you're in the red, that means, what do you think that means? In the analog world, that means you're distorting, right? Because, and if you know this, you guys are dealing with LED meters, which have segmented lights that go up and down. Back in the day, we used the VU meter, which is the needles, right? The ones that go back and forth like this. VU stands for volume unit. And then when you're in the red, there'd be a red part of the graph that this thing moved on, and then also a light that would turn red, and that means you were in the red. So, like I said, in the analog world, it means this, you're distorting. But then in the digital world, when you're in the red, it's even worse, because what's happening in the digital world is clipping. So if you've ever seen a waveform, anybody that has a DAW here, you've seen a waveform, right? It goes like this. But if it clips, it goes up, it goes square wave, and then comes back down again. That square it's a clip, and you will hear it. And it's unusable. You can't do anything with that. You have to bring down the level. With distortion for analog, sometimes it sounds cool. They call it saturation. They give it all these different names. But in the red, that's what that means. Feedback, I'm sure anybody that's played live is very aware of what that is. But basically, it's an oscillation. It's exactly what it is. It's a feedback loop. Feedback is, we call it a feedback loop, because what's happening is you're talking into a microphone that's then coming out of a speaker that then is traveling to the microphone, then it's being amplified, and then going back to itself. So you're creating a loop, right? Microphone, speaker, speaker, microphone, microphone, speaker, and then it starts to pick up at a certain frequency. And depending on what it wants to hurt you with, it'll be something high, something low. I mean, it could be anything depending on the microphone, depending on the speaker. So we're going to teach you how to kind of avoid that. Oh yeah, and the one way you can avoid that is proper mic technique. So, for instance, if can you shoot this monitor again? Let's come down here. So, this is the best way to if this microphone's here, bring it up a bit so you can see both the microphone and that, Karen. Yeah. So I don't know if you can see that, but anyway, you want to keep it there. You don't want to be here. Like if you're here with a microphone, right? If you're here with a microphone, now it's shooting at it from the side. If you have it straight on, right? This is where it's going to, geez, what the word? I forgot the word now. But anyway, it cuts it off. It doesn't pick up anything that's directly behind it. So if you keep that there, you're going to be able to turn up your monitor a lot louder than if you were here, or worse, if you're here, if it's behind you, or if it's it's like now the microphone, it can pick up the monitor, and now you're going to be in trouble, right? Same thing goes for your speakers that you put out front. You do not want to do that. You want to make sure that those speakers are a foot or so ahead of you. If you're absolutely forced to put it behind you, then try to maybe direct them in a different way so they're not aimed right at the microphone. Aim them out if you have to. If you have to put them here, aim them out a bit so they're not pointed right at it. Really, really smart, and you'll be able to it's easier to get your volume up to where it needs to be, specifically a vocal. The vocal is the hardest thing to get loud because it's the quietest thing, right? A snare drum's not hard to get loud. It requires very little level. Same with the guitar amp. You barely have to do anything to that. Sometimes they're too loud. Actually, most of the time they're too loud. But anyway, that's feedback. Another thing is hertz. When someone says 10 kilohertz or 10 hertz, what they're talking about is a cycle. So that's what sound is measured in. So for instance, 100 hertz would be 100 cycles per second. So that's fairly low. But then you get up into the higher range, then you get into stuff like 10,000 hertz, or what they call 10 kilohertz. So that's the measurement of frequency. EQs. There's a lot here, right? You can have graphic EQ, which we've talked about already, right? And EQ is short for equalizer. It's a series of filters that you can use to cut or boost, depending on what you need to do, to change the tone of whatever it is you might want to change the tone of. Say, for instance, if you had a guitar, you mic'd up a guitar amp, and you're finding that it's a bit too bright. Well, then you can go and find that sort of painful area where that guitar is maybe a little too edgy, and you can filter that out. You can take it out with the EQ. That's what it's there for. That's one function of it, and another function is to get rid of feedback. So if it starts feeding back at a certain frequency, you can deal with it. You can take out that certain frequency using something like this. We have other ones that have more of these sliders, and they cut up the frequency range into even more sections. So that is called a 31-band graphic EQ. So it's got 31 sliders on it, and it's what's called 1/3 octave. I'll explain that later, but it's not really not that important. But like I said, instead of having this, which is octave, so it goes 125 hertz, then it jumps, it doubles that, in the next octave, 250 hertz, then the next octave, 500 hertz, then 1,000 hertz, and so on and so on. The 1/3 octave breaks it up even more. So it's got 3 bands per octave. So you have even more tonal control. So instead of pulling down something like that and taking out all this big chunk of the frequency response of something, you can take out just that little bit where it's feeding back. So there's graphic EQ. There is parametric EQ. Parametric EQ is pretty much these, but a parametric allows you to, remember I was telling you before, how you can select a frequency and also select the bandwidth that you're dealing with. Very, very useful to have. And all the higher end consoles have that. You won't see that as much. On a console like this, you'd be lucky if you had a fixed band for the top, a fixed band for the low, and what they call a sweepable mid that you can adjust. So that's EQ. Where did I leave off? Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. So another terminology that you may have heard is, and I've heard Tori say it, is pot. It's not what you mean. It's not what you think right away. You musicians, you. Pot is short for potentiometer, and a potentiometer is this. It could be one of two things. It could be this right here. This knob is a potentiometer. And all it's doing is, that's the least amount of resistance. That's the most amount of resistance. It's all it is a variable resistor. And then this fader. I'm talking about the analog world here. It's completely different in the digital world, but in the analog world, that's also a potentiometer, where that's the most amount of resistance. That's the least amount of resistance, right? So this resists the signal flow coming in, right? So the volume is low. This is not resisting the signal flow, so the signal can be loud. So that's pot or potentiometer. Okay, where else are we? Okay. Oh, I wanted to show you RTA. RTA stands for real-time analyzer. And if I can find my phone, I had one ready to go. So this is a real-time analyzer. You can zoom in on that. This is a very helpful tool. Oh, I'll try to hold it like this maybe. So that's a graphic representation of what's happening with the frequencies. So when you're setting up a sound system, and this one's not free, but because it has a few more bells and whistles. But these things are available at the Apple Store or whatever for free if you need. I mean, like I said, they don't have do all the stuff I needed to do, but definitely something that's useful tool to have.
Repeat what it is.
So this is, like I said, it's called an RTA, or real-time analyzer. So as an example, say you were using it just to get rid of feedback. If you don't have the ear for it with feedback and you just are guessing, or boosting channel or boosting faders just to find out which frequency it is, this will help you with that as an example. So I'll just give it a tone here and you'll see. See that? So then you would just look at that, go, okay, that's 2K or 2000 Hertz. And then you'd go over to your EQ and pull that down. It makes it really, really, really simple. And you can get, and that allows you to get where you want to be faster than just trying to do it with your ear and sort of going, oh, is this the one? No. Is that the one? No. You can zoom in, they can do it right away. And you can set this. This is for right now, what we're looking at is the 1/3 octave, which is the 31 band EQ that I was talking about. So you get all those, but you can also set this for 1 octave. And let me see if I can do that now for you. Right now it's set for 1 octave. So now, so you see how it's broken it down now? So now when I go, it'll show you what, I can't read that backwards, unfortunately. I think it's 2K. So like I said, you can go over to your EQ and you would see 2K and you pull that down. It's like, it's here for you, man. It's like, and like I said, for free, this is an amazing tool that, I mean, when I started in audio many moons ago, something like that would be, $3,000 to have that kind. And now it's on your phone. This is something you should have. If you're doing your own sound and you don't have this, you're wasting a lot of unnecessary time. You can do things really quick. And you can help other people out too, because I've sat in the audience and I've heard coming from monitors, and I can go up to the guy and go, hey man, you should pull 2K down a bit, or you should pull this down a bit. And they're like, oh, thanks, man. And they pull it down, no problem. I've done that lots of times. I remember Karen and I were on a cruise ship. I did the exact thing. I went up to the guy, said, 500 Hertz is out in the PA out here. If you pull that down, I'm a sound guy. I'm here to help you. He's like, oh, okay. Pulled 500 Hertz down, problem solved. So you can be an audio hero if you have one of these. And you can look smarter than you actually are, which I've done a lot. All right. Any questions?
Yeah. So we got 20 minutes left. I know you had a plan to maybe set up a speaker or something, or did you want to just go through a couple more questions?
We might make that. We want to have more stuff to do at another time. So we
Share
will.
placement though.
Okay. Well, I already talked about that, so I think we're fine. So yeah, go ahead with the question.
Okay, here we go. So this one says, I really don't feel comfortable doing line checks. What's your opinion on, I don't want to say demanding, but it seems to be the best word. What's your opinion on demanding full sound checks? I've played too many shows where the sound techs either don't turn my microphone up enough, or completely lose my bass player in the mic because of them using line check.
Yeah, that's unfortunately, it's kind of based on the individual. You're going to get someone who's really going to be helpful. You're going to be someone who's like completely apathetic, does not care. Just he's there to get a paycheck and he doesn't care, or her too. I've run into both. Like I said, that's the individual. You can be as demanding as you want, but like I said, if you it's based on an individual basis. If you start being demanding, then all of a sudden you're a jerk or you're a whatever, and they kind of shut down on you. But like I said, those other things I talked about before, when you show up on time and you're courteous and you don't waste people's time and stuff like that. I mean, you can kind of set yourself up for success with dealing with these people, right? In that situation, or show up, it sounds dumb. It's like, show up with donuts, show up with coffee. I'm dead serious. You guys you'll win the crew over right away, and it'll be like, what can we do for you? You know what I mean? You can just you can change it right around. Or, hey guys, can I get, can I get you guys a beer? Or I don't know, however you want to bribe them. Sometimes it's required. I've come into situations where I'm not necessarily playing, but I'm the crew chief. So I'm leading a bunch of people. I show up with coffee. I show up with donuts. It's, you know, it's whatever, $10 or $15 out of my pocket. And then I've got people, you know, they got nothing but love for me the whole day. If you do the same thing, treat it the same way, I think you can, like I said, you can turn it around for yourself and have a better experience if you just treat the people that you're working with better. That's my take on it.
That's some great advice. Hope everybody got that. So we have a couple more questions here. What are your opinions on in-ear monitors and Bluetooth microphones?
If you're in a small place, then okay, Bluetooth, sure. I like I said, we don't use a lot of Bluetooth technology here because it's not considered something that's on a professional level. So we don't use it. I think we have like one thing that might be able to hook up to an iPod or something like that so you can play music out of it. That's about it.
You won't let
But
me
for the
buy
most
any.
part, sorry, go ahead.
You won't let us buy any.
I refuse to have any major inventory of stuff like that because it's not professional level. It's not, like I said, and that's where we want to live. You know, we're not in the super high end of the pro, but we're still considered professional. We buy professional gear that's going to be used by professionals, and we consider you guys professionals. And anybody that's used non-professional stuff and has moved to the professional stuff, they'll know the difference. You know, it works. For instance, that's always great. I wouldn't suggest a Bluetooth thing. If, you know, for me, like I said, it's the technology, or just like wireless in general, it's sort of, you know, and any amount of things can interfere with it, unless you're like standing right next to it. Maybe that might be okay. I've seen guys use, you know, the wireless guitar Bluetooth things, and they work okay, or like a low level sort of like RF wireless. That, I mean, you can, like I said, if there's varying degrees of price and quality, usually price goes with quality, right? So the lower the price, lower quality, higher the price, higher the quality. We have in-ear monitors. We use the Shure stuff. And here, look, we have one right here. This is a, what is it? I forgot to put the number now. So this is a Shure PSM 900. So that is the transmitter thing right there. And this is the receiver. And this is an example of the earbuds that you can get with these things. So if you're going to travel down this path, which I suggest you do, if you can afford it, buy the higher quality stuff or don't buy it, you know, or just wait until you can afford the good stuff. These are really great because look what you have to bring now. This is what you got to bring. You got to bring that, and that, instead of that down there, that whole wedge down there. You don't have to bring that monitor anymore. It's bulky. Here it is. Here's your whole monitor system. And I know there's plenty of acts that travel with. We'll have a rack. You know, that's a rack there. If you don't know what a rack is, we'll have a rack full of these for the band, and they'll have a mixer in the rack as well, and it'll all be ready to go. It's just like plug and play. It's like all the inputs and all the outputs have already been figured out. They just plug into the main PA, and the sound guy basically gets a left and right, and he just deals with that. I've been in that situation a lot where I've had to deal with that, which is fine. You're at the mercy of however they've mixed the band, but it's okay if they're used to that. But these are great because as far as the monitors are concerned, there's not going to be any feedback anymore, right? You don't have a live microphone in front of a speaker. These kill that. And you can really, really get exactly what you want. But when you're in a festival situation, this is not something that people like to see arrive because it takes a bit more time to get it right. And you don't want to hurt somebody, right? If you get blasted by something loud, you can just move away from it, right? Because it's hurting you. You know, you've got to let go of what you're playing and then pull your monitors out of your ears, and that can be bad. There's an artist, one of the first artists to use these things. I'm going to date myself here. It was in the 70s. His name was Engelbert Humperdinck. I know, awesome stage name, right? He was the first guy one of the first guys to adopt this, and he lost hearing in one ear because he got blasted by feedback in one of these things. And it was, because the thing gets, if anybody, if you've worn proper in-ear monitors with the, the proper buds and the molds and all that stuff, it goes right into your ear canal. It doesn't just sit on your ear like headphones or little earbuds where you can just pop them out. It's like in there. It goes into your ear canal with a little tube. So to get that thing out before your head gets blown off or you lose hearing, right? There's a lot more protection in these things now. There's a lot of limiting and stuff like that that's built into these. So that kind of thing doesn't happen anymore, but still really not something you should have unless you're doing it yourself or you're traveling with a real technician that knows how to set these things up properly and has your best interest at heart, because they're getting paid by you. So of course they love you and they don't want to make sure that your hearing is okay. So like I said, if you're doing it for yourself, then sure, no problem. I wouldn't arrive at a festival or anything like that where someone else is in control of these things for you. I think it's a bad idea. But like I said, buy the good stuff. Don't cheap out on that, because there's no point. Oh, actually, I'm going to show you guys one thing here. I forgot to show you. There's another. That's the wireless flavor of that, but we also have the wired version. These things here, and we used this on the last OMCI showcase. So this is awesome, right? These are $50. So if you are in a band and you want to use in-ear monitors and you're not jumping off of anything, and you're a keyboard player that sits down and plays, or you're a drummer that sits and plays, or whatever, you're not moving around the stage, this is ideal, because all you got to do, there's your monitor mix, right? You've got control over it. You've got your own volume control and everything. It sits on your belt. If you're just sitting there and you can, it's like, instead of bugging the sound guy, hey, can I get it turned up? You can just go, I'll just turn that up myself, and you just turn it up.
What brand is those? Is that the
This
Behringer?
is made by Behringer, and of course I've taped over the name. I forgot what it's called now. But yeah, we used this on the showcase last year. A lot of you guys were wearing these. I can find out. Let me find out what that model number is. Because if you want to go in ears, that's the way to go, I think. Oh, it's the Behringer P1. That's what it is. And it takes a 9-volt battery, so make sure you got 9-volt batteries, extra ones if you need them. I lost my setup here. Turn that back on. So actually, that was one thing I wanted to talk about. Oh, so are we good? Did we have more questions? Or I continue?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. Another thing I want to talk about is a snake. There's another terminology you might hear when someone says audio snake, or just calls it a snake. This is what we're talking about right here. So what's great about a snake is you can have multiple channels, right? Here's a box. It's like, say, for instance, if you were miking a drum set, right, in a professional, on a professional stage, it's really, really wide. Big stages are 40, 50, 60 feet wide, and whatever, 50, 60 feet deep. This allows you to run, it's a multi-core cable. So this has 16, the equivalent of 16 mic cables all in one. So instead of running 16 different ones, you can run one of these cables. Like, for instance, I have it here. I don't know if Karen can see this. But over here, I actually have all my mics for my drum kit all set up in here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Can you? Yes. So here you go. Like, I plugged in the entire drum kit instead of having this, it's just better cable management. You don't have to, like I said, imagine having whatever 12 or so cables running across here and all the rat's nest that would cause. We need a way to do it. Anyway, the audio snake. So let's move ahead here. Where did I put my clicker? There it is. How are we doing for time? Are we good?
We got about 10 minutes.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, awesome. So we covered in-ear monitors, or IEMs. So that question came up. That was one thing I was going to cover. Wedge, when people say a wedge, they mean a monitor. They also mean a floor monitor. All those things are the same thing. So quickly, I'm going to go through all the different connector types that you guys are going to have to utilize. There's two basic kinds. There's unbalanced and there's balanced. What's the difference? Unbalanced are cables that you cannot run them long distances. An unbalanced cable would be a quarter to quarter, like a patch cable for a guitar. Anything over 25 feet, you're going to run into problems. With an XLR, which is considered a balanced cable, that you can run kilometers without having an issue. So that's why we use them. That's why we don't run a 1/4-inch cable, 300 feet to the console out in front of house and plug it in. We go through a DI that then converts it to XLR, mic cable, and then it goes out to the console. In the old world, now it's digital and things have changed. But you still need to plug stuff in. We're still living in a hybrid analog digital world. We're still analog around. So an unbalanced cable would be stuff like this that you've all seen a million times, right? 1/4-inch cable. That's a jack, what you'd use for a guitar, bass, keyboard, outputs, that kind of thing. There's also RCA. RCA, you've probably seen that on the back of something like a DVD player or CD player. That's also an unbalanced cable and not super strong level coming out of that. And the last one was what? Oh, the mini, what people call the aux, or you kids today with your aux, that's an aux, or it's actually a 3.5 millimeter connector, or 1/8 inch. It's also referred to as 1/8 inch, but when people say that to you, now you know what they're talking about. The balanced cables, they come in two flavors. There's XLR. XLR, you've seen it. You know it. It's also called mic cable, but it's not necessarily used for microphones only, right? You can have other signals or other things other than microphones plugged into this, like consoles, for instance, like I showed you on the back of that one console. This is balanced. Like I said, these things they can travel kilometers, really, really far before anything, the sound degrades on you. So you don't have to worry about it. And then there is, so go ahead.
There's such thing as 1/4-inch balanced cables too, for those
there is.
wondering.
I'm about to show that to you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I already showed it to you. Sorry, this is. So I'm going to see if Karen can zoom in on that. So you can see that. That's got 3 bands on it. See, so it's got a tip, a ring, and a sleeve, and that is balanced. That is, so you can do, like, there's microphones that actually have that as an output. Not very often, but you can. That's still considered balanced. But it's weird though, because it also has a double duty. You might see something like that on the end of a headphones, but that's not balanced. Then that is left, right, and ground. What that is, it's not tip, ring, sleeve anymore. It's not doing this. It's not a balanced cable. It's doing another duty. Same with 1/8 inch cables, right? They also are tip, ring, sleeve, but it's on a set of earbuds, for instance. You get the little connector. That's tip, ring, sleeve, but that's a ground, a left, and a right. Different situation, but because any of these connections in the pro world are considered balanced. And whenever you can, you want to use that over an unbalanced cable, except for the guitar. You know what I mean? That's why we plug into DIs, because DIs allow us to then convert to balanced, that then can travel long distances without issue, right? So it's okay to have a 10-foot or an 8-foot 1/4-inch cable into a DI, and then it goes up from there, right? That's why I said I've been in the situations where I've had other people set stuff up for me, where they run. They'll take an RCA like this, like that, and then they'll convert it to 1/4-inch, and they'll use a bunch of barrels, and they'll run it 300 feet or 200 feet to front of house, and I turn up the volume. All I hear is, because it's picked up all this airborne noise, stuff that we're not even aware of it. There's so much stuff going on
around us in the airwaves that we don't hear, but our electronic equipment picks it up, like I said, like a 1/4-inch cable will pick all that stuff up and then amplify it to your amplifier. Okay, where was I? So that is balanced and unbalanced. There's also three different types of signals, and they start with speaker. So speaker level is considered a high level signal. It's what will come out of an amplifier. That's speaker level. Line level is sort of a medium level signal. That's what would come out of, say, a console, right? The output, the XLR outputs on this. You can't drive a speaker with this, well, unless it's a powered speaker, but I mean, you can't just take the output of this console and plug it into an unpowered speaker and have sound come out of it. You will hear some sound, but it'll be super, super low and it wouldn't be useful. The next kind of signal is microphone level. Microphone level is, you guessed it, what comes out of a microphone. Microphone level. So the really important thing to know about these three things is that you want to connect them to each other properly, right? So a speaker output has to be plugged into a speaker input, right? You wouldn't take the output of a speaker and then plug it into here, right? You'd blow it up. You blow the circuit up. But if you plug it into a speaker, because a speaker is ready to receive a speaker output level signal. Same thing goes for a line level output. That would be something like a console, right? That would connect to either a amplifier, has a line level input on it. So it's like, so line level output, line level input. This would be a line level output coming out of here. It would go into either powered speaker like we have down here for this wedge here, or a powered speaker, or if you have unpowered speakers, it would go into an amplifier first, and then out of that amplifier to your speaker, okay? Now, microphone level is, obviously what we talked about, what comes out of here. Right on this console here is a microphone level input. So like I said, the important thing to remember is to plug those like things into each other properly. So you wouldn't plug, say, a line level output of a console into a microphone input. And why? Because this thing, this microphone input is ready to receive a very low level signal. And when you're sending it a line level signal, it's like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. It's distorting and it's unusable. And same thing in the other way too. If you plug a microphone level input into something that is waiting for a speaker level input, you won't hear it at all because its input is the resistance way higher, so you won't hear it. Anyway, just make sure you got line to line, speaker to speaker, mic to mic. That's all you got to remember with that. Any questions?
Yeah, I've
first?
got one more question here, and then we've got a request for our first years if you can do a quick demo on how to properly loop your cables.
Okay.
So what is, can you explain the difference between a powered speaker and a passive speaker for those who don't know?
Yes. Okay. Okay. First of all, we don't carry passive speakers, but passive speakers basically, like for instance, let me just put this up on here so we can see it properly. Okay. So you can't see it, but in this speaker, there is a 10-inch cone driver, or woofer they call it, right? But there's also a horn. So this does the bass and that does the treble, right? In this situation, this is a powered speaker. So internally, this has an amplifier, okay? But also more importantly, it has a crossover. Now what a crossover does, it splits the signal. So it says, okay, I'm gonna send only bass to here, and then I'm gonna send only treble to here. It's way more efficient. With a passive speaker, you've got, like it's usually a 1/4-inch cable. Like if you're using it for most of the stuff you guys rent at any music store, it'll come out of the amplifier 1/4-inch and into the speaker 1/4-inch. in that situation, the crossover is done with passive circuitry. It's not active. It doesn't require any power, and it's very inefficient. It still arrives sort of at the same thing, but it's very inefficient, and you're wasting a lot of power. Because if you think about it, a woofer like this uses way more power. This requires way more power than that does. So if you have 1,000 watts and it's going through a passive crossover, it's wasting. So instead, why don't you have two? This is, say, 100 watts, or say this is 500 watts, and maybe this is 100 watts. Way more efficient use of power. And not only that, these speakers here, like I said, I would suggest you get a powered speaker, whatever you can afford. It's going to be way, way better than having an amplifier slash, passive speaker combination. Less stuff to carry. Also, the processing that's built into this too. It's awesome. There's already EQ built into this stuff to make it sound good. There's another thing that you don't realize is happening inside there too, is time alignment. So if you look at the speaker from the side, you've got this woofer that's up here, but then the horn, it's longer. It's about this much longer than the woofer. So in the processing of something like this, it would take into consideration that little bit of space there. That's different time. This sound gets to you faster than the sound from the top. So they delay this, so this will be in time. So they're in perfect time alignment. That's another thing that's happening behind the scenes that no one realizes. You can do that with passive speakers. You can biamp things where you have two inputs. One does the top end, one does the low end. But this is the way to go, man. It's the wave of the future. The only thing that we have that's passive is our turbo sound line array. And but we have like the amplification that goes with that has that processing built into it. It's different. Most of the time when you would rent something from a music store, it would be a straight up raw amplifier with no bells and whistles, just raw signal going in and raw signal coming out, nothing in between, not doing anything, not processing, no time alignment, none of that stuff. All that is here, and just a way better way to go. Like I said, and everybody makes these now. They vary in price from, a few $100s to thousands of dollars. Like anything, there's this huge gap between the amateur stuff and the pro stuff. But you can get this stuff. This is an investment in your career, I think, because every time you go out and you're playing in front of an audience, you want to put your best foot forward. You want to be able, people to remember you. They'll go, yeah, I remember seeing that guy. He was awesome. The sound was fantastic. That's part of it. There's one thing to be a proficient at your instrument or be a good singer. If the sound sucks, then you suck. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. No one's going to remember. People always remember the worst thing about it. Oh, the sound was terrible. Yeah, he was okay, but I couldn't get past the sound, and then I left. Right. So keep that in mind when you're purchasing stuff. This is the way to go for sure.
And I can vouch for that. I saw ZZ Top one time, and obviously ZZ Top's great, but I left pretty early because the sound was just horrible. I couldn't hear anything, the vocals at all.
Speaker on a table.
Oh yeah, another thing. Speaking of this, always have a stand, right? Another way to win, right? So buy yourself a stand. They come in varying qualities too, as far as light duty, heavy duty, but so much better to have something like this, where you can see the issue, right? What's the you've got your speaker on the table here, and then here comes some guy dancing really badly right in front of your speaker. Well, then no one else can hear you, right? So instead, you get yourself a stand. And then you put that up there. Right? And actually, this is kind of cool to see that. This has an angle to it too. It has two slots on it, so you can point it down. If you put it up really high, you can point it down too. Or you can just go to the back and have it shoot straight. But you can see the difference, right? Now when someone walks in front of it, they're not completely blocking the speaker right off. Now everybody beyond this bad dancer can hear you. That's important. If you're going to spend all this money, like this is a lot of money. That is not a lot of money. So you're really doing yourself a disservice by spending a lot of money here and then not buying one of these. It's really dumb. So anyway.
That's some really good advice. We're just gonna wrap it up, I think, right now. We'll got one more quick question, and then we'll do the cable wrapping demo.
Sure.
So this question says, my interface for my computer has 2 inputs on the front, and that have line switches, and then 6 inputs on the back without them. Does this mean, does that mean I should only be plugging the lines into the front?
Those will, I have a similar device. I have the Scarlett, I think it's the 2i4, I think. So it's got 2 inputs, 4 outputs. On the front, there is this. Actually, I think this has the same input. Yeah, can you zoom in on that, Karen? That input there? Close, as close as you can get. Zoom right in. All right, see that? That is an XLR. Let me show you here. So this actually happened. We rented some speakers to somebody, and they go like, we couldn't figure out how to put, it looks like it's got a 1/4 inch input there. We couldn't plug the XLR in. Well, guess what? That's a dual connector that takes XLR, and it takes 1/4 inch. Right? It can be either or also, tip ring sleeve, but in, TRS, like unbalanced balanced 1/4 inch as well. Takes all 3 flavors. So that's what you'll probably are having on those interfaces. If you plug into channel 1, if you plug into that 1/4 inch slot there, it's going to be line level. That's what it's not going to think that's a microphone plugged in. If you plug it into the XLR, then you have usually a choice between mic or line, because like I said, XLR isn't necessarily just connected with mic cable. It's not, they call it mic cable, but it's actually XLR cable. You can plug a mic into it, but you can also plug the output of a console into it or out of it, right? So like I said, that will be dependent on what you're plugging into it. If you plug a microphone, switch it to mic. If you're plugging a 1/4 inch cable in there, it might be set to line, but it also might be there might be a setting on there called instrument. So if you want to plug in a guitar, for instance, directly into it, you can, and switch it to instrument, because instrument will give you a bit more of a gain boost, because it knows that it's going to be receiving either a guitar pickup or a keyboard or something like that. That's going to be a lower level than the output of a console. The output of a console like this is really high in comparison to like a bass or acoustic guitar or something like that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but like I said, I have those. And you'll have to make sure that you plug into the right thing, depending on what you need, and be able to switch it over to line or instrument or whatever it is. It really depends on the interface. I'm just talking about the one I have, and that's what I do.
Awesome. So maybe we'll just wrap it up, and you can give us a quick demo on how to wrap up your cords.
I think Karen should do it. I taught Karen. Okay, I'll show you now what I'll show you what not to do.
Perfect.
This is maybe, yeah. See this? Never, ever, ever. Okay. With any cable, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's connected to your electric lawnmower. This should never happen ever. You're really lessening the life. You're diminishing the life of your cable by doing that, because actually I'm not going to show you. I'm going to open up an XLR so you can see the cables are small. The conductors in these things are small. You're going to have to grab on the camera there and just show this quickly. Let's see if I can get this apart, if I remember how to. So tell me if you can zoom in on this. I'll hold it right there. See how tiny those little cables are? So when you're wrapping that over your elbow, you're really forcing those things into an unnatural way. And by doing that, you are crimping it or well, basically what's going to happen is you're going to go to use it one day and it's not going to work because you've broken it internally. So don't do that. All cables have sort of a natural sort of flow to them. Let me try to fix this back in here again. So you can see, I don't know if you can see that. I'll try to move in. This has what's called a strain relief. So it grabs onto the cable. So when you tug on it, or if you want to be a rock star and swing your microphone around like that, the connector's not going to go flying off because internally it's grabbing a hold of the cable like that. As you tighten this, well, that's called the boot right there. That's the chassis, that's the boot. As you crank this closed, it clamps onto the cable even more. So now it can take some of this. It can take some tugging, right? So there's two schools of thought on the cable wrapping thing. I'm going to let Karen show you, well, I don't know what they call it, the standard way or whatever, I don't know. Old school,
Oh, I
blah,
have
blah.
a certain way.
So drop it on the floor first.
So when I was learning, I was on site with all the techs and they would laugh at me if I did it wrong. When you are...
Not over under, just the regular way.
Yes, I just want to say when you're dropping it, be careful to make sure that it is not going in and getting wrapped up in knots right away. So you kind of throw it out if you need to rewrap again. Other people have different ways to do it. I hold just lightly in my hand and then twist it. Already it's messed up. The other thing, often I have a pile of cables that go out with our rentals for the do-it-yourselfers, and it takes me a little while to get them rewrapped because if they sit in the cold or outside, or if they're wrapped weird, they'll keep that shape. You will have to.
That's another thing that's important. Once you do that elbow wrap and you leave it like that, it will forever stay like that.
Yeah.
And then you won't be enjoying that cable. Just so you know. We've been in business for 5 years. We have hundreds of cables, hundreds. And I think we've maybe
had a couple.
Two stop working.
It's important.
So if you have a cable, and it's another thing, you want to buy good cable, right? Don't buy the cheapy stuff. If you can get a 1/4-inch cable that's 25 feet long for $10, leave it in the bin. Move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Much better idea. Get yourself some good quality. So anyway, that's how you do that wrap.
So
it's pretty straightforward.
It's actually a twist. So I'm loosely putting my hand out and then I'm twisting, and it looks easy, but seriously, just practice so that you're faster. And you'll want to practice this because at the end of the night, when the bar owner or whoever wants to get out of there and you're packing up your equipment, you don't want to be fumbling. You just want to be quick.
And whoever's rushing you, they can be damned. Because you're never going to do this, because this is money that you've spent. Every time you do this, you're taking money out of your pocket, because it's not going to last long. You can lower the longevity of that thing considerably. Like I said, we have hundreds of cables. Yeah. We wrap them all the time. We've had 2 break down in 5 years. That says something. Okay, the other one quickly is what's called over under. So I do this. I don't. Like I said, personal choice. Anything's better than this. Whether you do it this way, like the way that Karen showed you, or the way that I'm going to show you, it doesn't matter as long as you don't do it over your elbow. Right? Or around your hand. Like, I mean, we've gotten lots of these too, where people just do this around their hand. That's even worse, right? But when you're doing this, you're forcing that thing into a position it doesn't want to go. So over under. You start like this, you go one loop like this, and then the other loop comes under. Like I said, I don't usually do this. It's not my thing. Like this. And then you do a normal loop, and then you do under.
And that's
you can see, yeah, exactly. You don't want it to be too small or too big, because then it gets annoying. And then that's over. So yeah, like I said, I don't do this way a lot, so that's why I'm not very good at it.
Where can they get Velcro ties? Dollar store?
I don't know.
Ties are handy as well.
Oh, if you want to get Velcro ties, but anyway, you get the idea, right? See, I'm really crappy at it. Over. This kind of cable, I just wrap it the normal way that Karen was doing it. But there's certain kind of cable like that we use for video. SDI is one of them. Ethernet cable like Cat 5 or Cat 6. It's a bit more rigid, and this way works way, way, way better for wrapping them. But my cables, like I said, anything's better than over your shoulder, or sorry, around your elbow. So if you guys can just stick to doing that, you're going to be way better off. And I believe that's it. Yes.
Yep. So just one last parting question. That speaker behind you, is that a Behringer or?
No, that's turbo sound.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have here at our shop, we've got, do we have any Behringer stuff? Yeah, we do have Behringer stuff, actually. I'm listening to you out of a little Behringer speaker, little personal monitor. We have QSC of different flavors and turbo sound. So that's all we have. Behringer, QSC, turbo sound is all we got.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have today. We went a little bit over, but as always, it's a pleasure to have you with us, Bonds and Karen. Sorry, this is the Technical Production 101 MTAV. I think speaking for everybody in the chat, we really appreciate you coming on and helping us out and answering our questions.
Yeah.
If you have any parting words, you want to give them now?
If I could give any parting words, I would just say, know that this technical stuff, you may not have a huge understanding, but you need to have a huge understanding of it, because this is a big part of being part of the music business. It's not just all about music. There's a technical side, and then for the longest time, if you're lucky enough to one day have a technical team that works for you, then you know you've made it, or you're certainly on your way. But in the meantime, to be self-sufficient, learn about this stuff. Yeah. Invest in quality stuff. Invest in quality cables and quality speakers and and quality mixers and microphones and stuff like that. It's going to make a huge, huge difference to your sound, and that's how you're going to get people to start paying attention to you. If you sound like crap, or you sound like all the other guys that come into a bar, and it's like you kind of, if it sounds crappy, then all of a sudden you become wallpaper. You become background noise. But if you sound awesome, then people go, whoa, what's going on over there? They take note of that, right? It's like you said, you walked out on a show. We've done the same thing. I've walked into a pub. It was so loud, we pretty much turned right around. A couple times. It's like, I'm not going to sit here like this. The entire time I'm sitting having a beer or going for burgers or whatever. I'm not going to do it. And that's what you're forcing those people to do. And that's going to be directly affect you, because if you are too loud or if your sound sucks, then that guy that hired you to do that gig is going to go, you know what? Last time we usually have 50 people here. Because your sound sucks so bad, 20 people stayed. So I'm not going to hire you again until you make a better, a proper investment in your gear. Do it on layaway if you have to. Places like Long McQuaid's, and I don't know if Music Pro does, but they know who their clientele is. They know that musicians, you're not bursting with cash, so they have special financing where you can pay something off over a long period of time. Really, really good way to go. But like I said, invest in that. It's investing in a good PA system is as important as investing in a good guitar and good cables and all that stuff. It's equally important, and it will definitely affect your career either in a positive or a negative way, depending on which way you go. If you think this is Bond, you know what you're talking about. That's I'll get whatever, whatever speaker. No one really cares. They do care. They do care a lot. Like I said, like even non-musical people know what good sound is now. They know it. They hear it all the time. They just got to turn their TV on. That's good sound. It's coming from all sides. So when you're not giving that, they know it right away. They're like, That's not good sound. And then they'll leave, or they'll just zone out on you and go about their day and have their wings and leave and not stay to listen to you.
Okay,
So anyway.
thank you, and over.
Perfect.
All right. Rant over.
That's all right. Wise words from Vons. Thank you so much again for coming on. I think
right.
that's all we have for today. Thanks everybody who joined us.
Our pleasure, guys.
Take care.
Talk to you soon.
All right.